Today is Wednesday, February 11th, 2026, and this is Spring Office Hours Season 5, Episode 6, Spring Framework 7 with Juergen Hoeller. My name is Dan Vega, Spring Developer Advocate at Broadcom, joined by my good friend and colleague, DaShaun Carter. DaShaun, how's it going, my friend?
It is a great time to be a Spring developer. That's all I have to say. Like, this is amazing. I'm really excited about today.
I'm pretty excited. I'm not going to lie. I couldn't get much sleep last night thinking about this. So we'll get right into it. As always, if you have questions, we are on a live stream. You can join us usually every Monday from 1 to 2 on a live stream. If you cannot catch the live stream, you can go ahead and catch the replay on the Spring Developer YouTube channel. We also take this and turn this into a podcast, so you can take us wherever you are, on the run, in the car, on the go, wherever you get your podcast, you can get Spring Office Hours. Now, DaShaun, we can probably answer some questions today, I think.
Today's a special date and time because we have a special guest. The questions, if you've got questions, here's the thing. When you come to my house for dinner, if you leave hungry, that's your fault. Today is a very special guest. If you've got questions and you don't ask, that's your fault. If you're here in the live stream, get your questions in. Also, if you're here in the live stream, go ahead and tell us where you're from. Say hi. Let us know where you're joining from, because my mom and dad are always watching. They like to see where everybody's joining from.
All right. I'm going to waste no time today. Bring on our special guest. I'm going to welcome to the stage Mr. Juergen Hoeller, co-founder of the Spring Project and lead. Juergen, how's it going?
Hey, hi. Pretty fine. You're catching me at a good time of the weekend of the day here.
Yeah,
so I'm
middle of the week.
Out of my home office in Austria, since we are for your mom and dad.
There you go.
So there you go. I'm basically in this transition phase between Spring Framework 7.0 and what comes next, right? So it's a good time to talk about those things.
Yeah.
Where we had a launch of 7.0 GA last November.
Yep.
And we're already pretty actively preparing for the 7.0 release this November 2026.
Nice. For those who may not know who you are, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're up to these days?
Sure. Well,
what have you been doing the last 25 years?
Yeah, almost 25. But I've been so just a quick summary, I guess. I've been in this for a very long time. I've been co-founding the Spring Framework open source project back on SourceForge in the old days in early 2003. And I've been serving as the project lead of the core Spring Framework project ever since, basically. So that's the executive summary, with a couple of side responsibilities. So I've been going out doing consulting, training, customer visits, conferences over the years, with some stronger focus now on actual framework development. So you'll most of the time you'll actually find me on GitHub, basically, working on things, preparing things, coordinating things, developing things these days.
You know, I was just thinking of something. I remember being on like longer projects, and when I say longer, I mean like a year project. And I remember after like a year, I was like, all right, I'm ready to move on to like the next thing. So I can't even imagine 25 years. Do you ever get that itch to like start something new or like? I mean, there's challenges because you have different. I mean, there are challenges because you have
a difference, right?
Right. I mean, you have different releases, so there's always a new focus, but. How is it? Is it challenging working on that same project for that long?
You know, that's the exciting part is that we are right in the middle of an ecosystem, right? Right in the middle of everything happening in Java on the JVM, and things have been making quite a difference there, right, over the years. I mean,
for sure.
Let's go back 2 decades. That was pre-iPhone, right? Pre-Android.
Yeah.
Obviously, also a very different landscape of technologies for web application development. It was the days of Apache Struts.
Struts,
right?
I remember Struts. I
the
started
early days
in
of Hibernate, I guess, right? The early days of Tomcat. but also outside of the Java space, things happening. Ruby on Rails, then coming along.
PHP,
PHP, obviously. There's lots of things are actually still around, even 2 decades later. Fast forward to today, you'll still find many of the options out there, but preferences have changed, right? And in particular, the kinds of systems being built obviously are just a little different from back in the day. Everything was about serving HTML and HTML forms and more traditionally architected web user interfaces back then. We did JSPs, we did template engines, rendering. HTML was as far as you got. But over the years, we built very different architectures now. Say endpoints delivering JSON being the norm. Very different trade-offs also made in system architectures. And it's that basically all the surroundings and the architectural motivation that just keeps coming up with basically just something fresh, something new
challenges,
something old coming back. But sort of it changes every now and then, every couple of years. There's something exciting, some exciting new trend, new initiative, new innovation to be picked up, and that also keeps me just very motivated to do the best we can to embrace, to anticipate and embrace these trends, these possibilities, and to roll them into the programming model basically from day one, so that we are ready, that the framework is ready whenever developers out there get around to wanting to do things that way, right? We already need to be a little ahead of that, right? We're close industry observers. In the general application development space, even more so in the Java ecosystem, specifically, of course, with the JVM. And we always mean to be the first picking up new Java language features, supporting the use of new Java language features in application code in particular, right? Let's put it like that. The framework itself doesn't have to use everything the Java language has to offer, but applications need to be able to use the latest and greatest, right? We mean to support the application developer in writing the best possible code. We started back, if we go back quickly once more, we started in the JDK 1.3, 1.4 days. So pre-Java 5, pre-annotations, pre-generics. Then had to embrace, it was the first major challenge for the framework, right? To embrace everything Java 5 could do, everything annotations can do, everything generics can do, to retrofit the existing code base, the existing APIs onto a Java 5 baseline. Or then fast forward a number of years, Java 8, Lambda expressions, right? All the goodness we were able to expose to application development by just following certain conventions in the framework, and the Java compiler kind of naturally picking it up. So that's also another thing I really, really like about what we do. It's the collaborative angle, right? We collaborate closely with the Java Platform Group at Oracle, with the likes of JetBrains, right, for Kotlin, for IntelliJ IDEA, for tooling.
Libraries like Jackson. I know you guys had a lot of work with them during Spring Boot 4, right?
Right. So, we are very, very much embracing everything that goes on out there, and are trying to do the best we can to be a good citizen in every context out there. That's a really interesting challenge in its own right, because there are so many different kinds
moving
of
pieces,
environments out there, right? There's another thing that changed over those 2 decades. Back then, it was all about application servers and more traditional ways of deployment. And these days, self-contained deployment with embedded web service became the norm. But of course, there's still deployment to application servers, and there's still deployment to managed Tomcat instances, right? So we need to serve and cater to all those different audiences and environments out there with a single canonical code base and a single sort of work stream through it, right? So we're not trying to do special purpose offerings for different environments. We are trying to unify it into a single programming model, a single configuration model that is able to serve all those needs. That's been our mission statement back then, 20 years ago.
I try to imagine what was the initializer. What would the initializer look like 20 years ago? Like how many databases did we choose from 20 years ago? Like how many different flavors of things? It was totally different. So just in terms of the initializer, start.spring.io, like thinking of all the things. And then even in the last year, our drop-down list exploded because of the vector stores. Like all the things that have come in to fill these gaps and needs or fashions in the entire ecosystem have been filled in some way.
That's actually another important challenge in evolving a framework, an infrastructure project of this kind over more than 2 decades. You need to know when you can abandon things, when you need to abandon things, when you need to leave things behind. There's been quite a few things over the years that we picked up. They were sort of important at the time, but then faded away from there. We don't have Strut support anymore. for that matter, right? There's still some Struts usage and still some ways to call into Spring applications from there, but we don't have it in the core framework anymore. I'm happy to support any kind of integration anyone benefits from, but we don't need to own it necessarily within the core framework. Otherwise, you're stretching yourself thin. You're trying to support everyone's and anyone's version of things out there, and that just doesn't fly. So we need to pick what we use as sort of reference architectures, while at the same time remaining flexible enough to be ready for integration into, say, anything else, basically, right? Into more into things that aren't as mainstream anymore, or never were, right? So at the never were part, we sort of have a bit of a mainstream application architecture that we're targeting, right? Sort of. It's not very well defined because it's the application architect that chooses the architecture, not the framework, right? The framework supports the architectural choices made in the development team, in the architectural decisions there. But yeah, there's a sort of mainstream, and at the same time, there are also interesting corners of our space, right, where things are being done differently for good reasons. It's never going to be the majority of people doing it that way, but it's still very important to the people needing to do it that way. And we had that over the years in many flavors and forms, right? But it's still with us today. Not everyone builds WebSocket architectures. Not everyone does messaging systems in general. But for those
gRPC is a good example of that, right?
Oh yeah. In particular in web integrations, there's been so many things. Some people really like to do server-side events. We try to support all of these flavors of doing things in one way or the other, right? Some capacity, and that's kind of also keeping me very excited personally. I really appreciate being able to sort of also see and work towards a sort of mainstream, and at the same time to support all those interesting other ways of doing things, other architectures being used out there, and that's also an interesting mix, right? So for a framework architect, basically, it's very exciting to be able to have to serve in different directions and to identify the commonalities and the differences between those architectures.
You talked about the mainstream and how you Spring Team can't support everything. One of the things that I ask a lot is like, how big do you think the Spring Team is? 2,000, 3,000, like some people. You said getting spread thin. Some people don't realize how small the core Spring Team is. It's a massive community, lots of contributors, lots of people. It's open source, but the core of the group, I feel like you touch a lot, and that's amazing. And we do have a nice solid core. But the other thing that I've noticed is the proliferation of all the other like niche products and even the enterprises, they've built on top of Spring. They have taken this framework and they've extended it for their companies to build their companies on top of. And how does that make you feel when you realize that there's hundreds of thousands of companies that have taken your framework and chosen it to be the nuts and bolts of what they build on top of?
Well, if you had asked me those 20 years ago, I would have said like, yeah, well, I don't think it's going to be quite that massive. But man, obviously, it's one of the greatest aspects of doing this, of being able to do this, is to see it in action, to see it in production, to know that we are working on something that is so critical to a lot of production systems out there. Personally, when I came out of university, the one desire I had was to work on something that is actually being used somewhere. Coming out of academia, I was actually working at the university at a university-like institution for a while. And there you basically work for, you don't know what you work for, right? For papers, it's kind of interesting what you do, but you don't see it being picked up. You don't see it in use. Right. When I moved into the software industry out of that background, I really wanted to work on something that is in use somewhere, where you see it work, where you see it fail, right? If things fail, you learn out of that. So I really wanted to be right in the middle of this, right? And now we might not be the ones actually running those production systems, so I don't get the notifications if something goes wrong. But in the end, it comes back to us in some way, right? If it's been identified to be a problem that the framework can help with, or that's actually a bug in the framework, then it gets back to us, and we learn about the use case. We learn where it came from. We get a little bit of insight, at least, into the production systems that way. And I really appreciate that. I don't want to work in an ivory tower, right? I want to have that feedback loop. And in particular, running an open source project of this kind and of this extent is just very closely intertwined with all the production usage out there. I don't want it any other way, right? I don't want to be shielded from that. I want to feel it.
You talk about that feedback loop, and I gotta imagine the number of bugs or issues or feature requests that come in are probably massive at this point. How do you balance, like, which ones do we work on now? Which features do we address next? Because I'm sure there's more work than we can tackle right now, right? So how do you kind of balance that out?
Yeah, I guess it's one of the key responsibilities of mine, right? Sort of is also making certain choices for my immediate responsibilities in the core Spring framework, but also advising to the rest of the portfolio in terms of potential priorities or say opportunities also, right? It's like I very much see and I very much make judgments based on just a couple of simple characteristics, right? What can we work on right now that empowers people to do things in exciting, interesting ways, just a little down the line. So where just a little effort on our end can have a lot of impact for many application development teams out there. It's sort of it's a matter of impact in a way, right? Performance optimizations can have a lot of impact, right? So we basically know that if we tweak something, if something is just a little more efficient, basically imagine that being rolled out into all those production systems and then making a difference, saving CPU cycles, saving memory, saving some energy, all over the globe, basically, right? It's very much not an isolated decision making that we're going through there for our own purposes. It's really considering the context of everything that is in use out there, considering the evolution of the JVM. A key aspect is that we want to be ready. We want to make things ready so that people can pick up the latest JVM release, LTS mostly, but even the regular ones, whenever they're out. So we never want to be the ones that hold people back from updating their JVM, because a lot of goodness comes out of the JVM upgrades, right? We can align with those, we can proactively integrate with those, but even just upgrading the JVM, not touching your Spring-based system at all, can have massive benefits to the overall system. But that means we need to be ready. If Java 25 drops, you take the latest Spring Framework, Spring Boot release, run it. You run things on Java 25. You just upgrade your JVM and your framework and boot versions, and you get the benefits basically right away, right? You can maybe get even more benefits by using some new facilities, using some new doing things, but even transparent benefits for the very same application code. Transparent underneath the covers is also a mission that we're on, right? Always.
Yeah. DaShaun and I always out there talking to customers, and we want to get you on the latest version of Spring, but our first mission is just upgrade the JDK from 17 to 25. The improvements you're going to see in performance and garbage collection and security are astronomical, right? Do that first, save a bunch of money, and then go tell the higher ups, hey, we want to take advantage of these new features in Spring, right?
For our enterprise customers,
you can upgrade the JVM even with the Spring Framework 6.2. You can upgrade the JVM to 25, no problem. Right. You don't need to upgrade to 7.0 just to be able to run on JVM 25. So we always had this. We always had this attitude that those decisions need to be rather independent. You need to make your choice, do it at the time that works for you. At some point, you might be able to upgrade the framework. You might be able to upgrade Spring Boot, but not the JVM, because that's someone else's decision, right? In the organization. Or the other way around. You are able to upgrade the JVM, but for the certain intricacies and certain nuances, you can't upgrade the framework and boot version yet. Both of those are scenarios that we entirely see as first class, right? We want people to be able to go through these in steps that they take at a time that works for them.
We see all of those cases. One of the things that I try to do is I want you to be on the latest and greatest so that you can take the milestone releases for a spin, so that you can take the release candidate for a spin, and you can give honest feedback. Our community, in order to keep going in the right direction, we need that kind of feedback. So we deliver a framework, and we kind of ask our customers, our stakeholders, to take those early releases, take them for a spin, and give us feedback. Now, the framework's built on top of the JVM. So my question for you, have you installed Java 26 or 27 early access editions yet? How soon do you take those when you're developing the framework? How far ahead are you looking?
We usually do try even the latest release candidates, not necessarily always for local development, because you don't necessarily need it, but on the CI service, we are trying to see where we are even there. So I would say reasonably close to the release roadmap we usually are. Personally, I'm using, for development almost exclusively Java 25. I'm ignoring everything that came before, in particular. But the delta, the difference in the feature set between the certain JDK JVM releases isn't always of the same kind. With Java 24, I think I was among the very first ones running Java 24 in Anger when it dropped, because of everything that it had in there. It brought the laden, the AOT cache features, and quite a few other things out of preview for the first time. So in preparing for the Java 25 LTS release, we were actually working hard on making Java 24, on having best possible Java 24 alignment. We try to do things in a very timely fashion usually. And also, taking things for a spin, giving people the opportunity to try things, not necessarily in production, but somewhere, right? And then that's also part of our mission. We have a JDK 17 baseline, even in Spring Framework 7, right? So we don't force people to upgrade to JDK 25. We just recommend to go straight to 25 if you can, right? But that's also, there's a sort of give it a try spin to this, right? So you might have 17 in production right now, but why not do a smoke test, right? Or just find out where you are. If you just upgrade to 25, maybe it's more straightforward than you think, right? So we want to put people into the position of being able to do this, to find out where the system is at when they upgrade to JVM or they upgrade anything else, right? The reason why we picked up Jackson 3 so early, right? The Jackson, since we talked about Jackson and Tattoo the other moment, we could take a more defensive, a more conservative approach, right? We could say, like, let's see where Jackson 3 goes out there. When it gets traction, when it sees adoption, then and only then we're going to have first-class support for it. But that kind of breaks the cycle, right? Because how should it get traction if we don't provide first-class support for it? There's a catch there, right?
And that's a little bit of a responsibility.
It is. I mean, we're trying to empower people to use Jackson 3 or try Jackson 3 in their Spring setups, not forcing them. They still have to Jackson 2 support for the time being. Yep. There's, or say, Hibernate versions, right? So for the longest time, we, like in the previous framework generation, we had, you could even use Hibernate 5.6 still. We recommended 6.x, 6.6 eventually, but we didn't really force anyone to go as far as that. Or right now, we have a Hibernate 7, we are on a JPA 3.2 baseline now, but there's JPA 4.0 and Hibernate 8 coming up. And just recently, Hibernate 8.0 Alpha 1 dropped. Our upcoming Spring Framework 7.04 release, which is like due tomorrow, is runtime compatible with Hibernate 8 Alpha 1 and JPA 4.0 and 1 behind it. Not because we think anyone's going to take this into production, but to allow people to give it a try and to also to empower the feedback loop there, right, between large-scale users and Hibernate itself, right? So that even if Hibernate 8 has any issues, they can report it straight there. But we are not the ones making it hard to try that, right? We allow people to do an opt-in upgrade and see where they're at. Obviously, you wouldn't take an alpha release very far, but you can prepare yourself for another launch of your system where Hibernate 8.0 might already be GA and you want to be able to pick it up, right? Whatever it is. We're just trying to support everyone in being able to make reasonable decisions and reasonable preparations toward their own release dates.
I wanna change gears here. You mentioned Spring Framework 7. That came out in November. How's the feedback been? Have you been hearing good things about it? Because I have some thoughts on it, but I just want to hear like what you've heard.
Yeah. I'm happy to hear all the feedback coming. It is generally a release that seems to be straightforward to upgrade to. So we haven't.
Yeah.
Oh, not knock. Tomorrow all the problems might be, but so far the things, the rough edges that every initial generation comes with weren't actually that hard and were more like little gaps that we were able to fill in the 702, 703, now 704 release. So we are still in this aftermath of 7.0 GA in a way, but not in fixing showstopper things, but more like in filling certain gaps in the core resilience feature arrangement, or no, in the JPA 3.2 support, where we're filling certain gaps that the people immediately reported. They tried the upgrade, generally works, but they were missing something, right? This one thing or that other thing. And we're trying to be pragmatic about that and just trying to fill those gaps. We could only fill them in 7.1, but if it's easy enough to do, why not fill it in 7.0? 704, right?
Yeah.
We're not going to do this for too long, but we try to be pragmatic if the arrangement is more complete and allows people to make immediate use of it. So yeah, generally a very good feedback. In particular, hardly any real trouble in the upgrade itself. And there's always if you raise a baseline, if certain features that were deprecated before go away, you're always going to find someone running into this because they're only finding out as they try the upgrade and it's gone, right?
I do feel like talking to customers, we've seen that, like, the move from like 5 to 6 was a lot harder than the move from like 6 to 7. because of a lot of the foundational changes.
So Jakarta namespace, and it wasn't our
JDK.
choice to do this. But,
yeah.
There was only one
sure.
path forward, right?
right. Yeah. And that's been really exciting to see the evolution of the APIs there. Like that was stagnant forever, right? And so some of these changes are probably not easy decisions, but it's like we have to make this change. We gotta start moving forward instead of standing in place, right?
I see it very much that way. The Jakarta namespace change initially might have looked like, hey, I just breakage, no benefit, right?
Yeah.
But then there was already Jakarta, the E10 umbrella. It isn't actually what we're centrally tracking, but sort of the JPA up 3.1 released those pieces. They already started adding new capabilities, right? So there was a future actually showing some concrete promise, some concrete benefits at that point beyond just the namespace change. And Spring Framework 7 and the JPA 3.2 in particular that we have there now, I think is really proving that there's a future that was waiting in the Jakarta namespace version of JPA Beanville Edition and Servlet, where that change really, once you're beyond it, right? Once you're on at least Framework 6, Framework 7, and everything that comes with it really delivers a quite massive improvement in those areas that hopefully makes the effort worthwhile, right? That people had to go through back then. Oh, and there was also the JDK 17 baseline. I get that as well, right?
Yeah.
The JDK, the rather dramatic raise of the baseline from JDK 8 to 17.
Felt like it, but I mean, it's a pretty obvious choice at this point. Like, but at the time, I understood. Yeah.
We're also trying to make those decisions based on a bit of a forward-looking note, right? So sort of a decision that needs to make sense when that framework generation is kind of the norm, right? When people are actually going to take that framework generation into production. We're not making that decision when we start our development of that generation, right? So there might be literally 2 years in between. So I think that's also important. And this time around, we're also showing that we can do it differently, right? We did not raise the JDK baseline. It's still JDK 17, but with a twist, right? JDK 25 if you can, right? So sort of 17 we require, 25 we recommend. So it's that's technically a perfectly fine arrangement. We're using multi-release jars, so we are not held back by that. We can do 21 and 24 specific support and through multi-release jars. A multi-release jar, more specifically, right? So the Spring Core jar in Spring Framework 7 has 21 and 24 specific classes in it. And the JVM has this multi-release jar mechanism that naturally lets us do this. So we didn't feel technically, it wasn't really technically justifiable to raise the baseline, or technically necessary, let's put it like that, to raise the baseline. Even for virtual, right, which is 21 plus, but we are not held back at all. We can do full-scale virtual thread support with a 17 baseline and the multi-release jar part for 21.
Yeah, and I think for me, when I was looking at like Spring Boot 3 and Spring Framework 6, there were a lot of these like headline features, right? Like, hey, we're moving the baseline to JDK 17. We're moving to the Jakarta namespace. When we got to Spring Boot 4 and Spring Framework, native images, the new observability story, right? Mm-hmm. When we got to Spring Boot 4 and Spring Framework 7, when I first kind of looked at the features from afar, I was like, okay, there's nothing really like standing out, right? Like there's no headline grabber. But I will tell you, as I started to get into the weeds and start taking a look at some of these features and actually using them, I was like, wow, there is a lot of really great things here. And so I just want to mention a couple of them. One, null safety across the entire portfolio of projects. Again, it doesn't, based on JSpecify, it doesn't, when you first see it, it doesn't like jump off the page like, oh my gosh, this is going to change my life, right? But when you get in and start writing applications using some of these annotations that are now widely used across the Java ecosystem, it really, Sebastian did a good job of explaining this to me. It's almost like the comfort you get when you write tests. Like I have this confidence that my code is going to work and not disrupt the system as a whole. And I feel like null safety does the same thing for me when it comes to that stuff.
Absolutely. It's one of my favorite things we did in Spring Framework 7. The JSpecifier using type annotations and over nullabilities is the best we can do right now, because it's different from what we did with the method level and parameter annotations before. Type annotations have certain qualities of their own, and it's the best we can do also to prepare for anything coming out of Project Valhalla, the JVM in general, right?
Exactly.
Nullability support in the Java language itself, right? So we want to be forward compatible with the direction that the Java language itself takes. And we want to align with Kotlin, right? So a key reason why we started doing nullability in Spring Framework 5 initially, right? And now with JSpecifier in 7, a key reason is Kotlin integration, Kotlin type inference for the Kotlin compiler against Spring Framework APIs. That was a key motivation.
Yeah, and again, it's not just at the framework level. I mean, the ecosystem of projects have adopted it, and it's really nice to see. So, another one I want to talk about, which I know is probably near and dear to your heart, is the new Bean Registrar API. And so this is really a programmatic way to register beans. You get access to things like the environment, and I hear you talk a lot about this, and you said, you're probably not going to reach for this all of the time. Maybe it's a 10% use case, maybe less, I don't know. But whatever the case may be, when you do need to reach for it, it comes in like really handy.
Yep. It's to be appreciated when you actually have the need for it, right? Then you see what this means. While at first glance, it looks like, okay, I mean, I'm able to do this, to express this in configuration classes, in bean methods. I can express it in a somewhat different, more like programmatic functional style way here in a bean register implementation. So what, right? But the difference is the static versus dynamic nature. Right? A configuration class is very static. We literally have a class with a specific method, specific number of methods, and every one of those bean methods gets a bean definition derived from it, right? So it's very locked down structurally. Whereas in the bean registrar, you can do unusual things like if statements, for loops, right? You register a number of beans in the for loop, right? Or in an if statement for conditional registration.
Right.
I mean, in all seriousness, you're back into the full dynamic capabilities of basically the Java language, a Java-based registration API. Whereas an bean method, you need to return one bean. It's like, what can you do? It doesn't turn into a number of beans. You can't tweak the bean names for a number of beans. And conditions you need to attach to an add conditional in an annotation-based callback. So it's primarily there for certain purposes in the wider portfolio out there, where previously we had to have workarounds for those needs, and now there's a first-class way of expressing the need to register a number of beans that is not predefined, right? The dynamically computed number of beans, and also the dynamic conditions that you can do through if statements. So it's primarily that. And I'm definitely seeing use cases out there in third-party libraries, or many organizations have internal libraries, right, of their own, built on Spring for consumption in concrete systems.
We see this all
also
the time.
meant for those, right? Bean registrar is also meant for those, not necessarily for a particular application. I don't see that many use cases there. I usually recommend just go with configuration classes if it's sufficiently expressive for your needs, for your purposes. And bean registrars are more like for reusable units of configuration, like in a library, in a company internal or third-party library out there. And it's we don't do those things very often, right? So it's quite notable. When did we introduce configuration classes? That's a while ago, right? Framework 3 generation. We don't introduce new concepts of interacting with the core container all that often. In that sense, this is now, right? And it's quite notable for that reason, because it only happens once in a decade, sort of, right? That the core container gets a new facade of that kind.
But that is a big feedback. That's a common theme on the feedback that we get. Spring Framework 7 for the architects, the engineers at large companies, where they're making these starters. They're making these tools built on top of Spring for their enterprise. The feedback is there's been a lot of improvement. Spring Framework 7 has made this easier for us. And even with the Spring Boot starters, the splitting them out.
Modularization.
That has been a huge benefit. And then they've gotten to see, like, just by watching the patterns that the Spring team has delivered, which I've done my whole career. Hey, that looks like a good pattern. I'll follow that. By seeing what has been done there, then they're taking those improvements into their internal frameworks.
Yep. I'm very glad to hear that, actually, since there was kind of the point, right? We're not necessarily trying to always just improve the experience of a particular services development. We're trying to support an entire organization having reusable pieces of infrastructure, reusable components, reusable services, and then having many different kinds of production systems and services out there built on the same foundation, and deriving things from the core framework foundation that we build. So Framework 7 has quite a few pieces in there that are motivated by exactly those scenarios: larger scale reuse of certain facilities and simplifying the dependency arrangement between those, right? So bringing features into the core framework also has the benefit of them being available for anyone with just a core framework dependency, right?
That's another big move.
So that's also a reason why we sometimes do those things, like the core resilience features right now. It's motivated by ourselves being able to use it in other parts of the core framework, or other parts of the portfolio with very minimal dependency arrangements, and just bringing it into everyone's toolbox, right? And that is also a motivation why we do things, even if technically you can build those things on top yourself. We don't want people to do this, right? We want a unified model where everyone uses the same dynamic being registrar mechanism and not their custom variant thereof that is then hard to reuse. So that's also part of our mission, right? We're trying to identify commonalities that the entire ecosystem out there can benefit from.
We saw the same thing with the new API versioning support. You could always version your APIs, right? But the problem was within an organization, every team could now kind of implement their own versioning strategy. We're kind of giving you that
an exercise to the developer, right?
Exactly, and that's tough when you jump projects and everything's different. And so I'm a big fan of standards for that reason alone. Just like, hey, I know that when I work on project A, B, and C, our versioning strategy is going to be the same across the organization, and now we're kind of giving
it the same way, right? It's it's embedded. The version ranges are embedded the same way, and it's like. It's our API versioning theme in Framework 7 was also not trying to do anything radically new. It's just seeing common practices out there and providing ways to do it in a streamlined fashion, part of request mapping, part of the HTTP client interactions that we do. So kind of bring it in a very natural fashion. But the actual strategy itself, the versioning strategy, is entirely configurable, but typically configured per application, right? You can basically make up your mind. That's the way I do API versioning. You configure it once and all your endpoints participate in the arrangement. And that's a value only we can provide by bringing it into the core framework, the core web framework in this case, into Spring MVC and Webflux. But that's a value only we can deliver. You can't build it on top of the framework. And with API versioning, I'm also very happy to see that we are kind of meeting the demand out there, and even existing versioning arrangements can be migrated onto the versioning arrangement that we have now, right? So if you did it in a custom way before, you should have a good experience migrating to the configurable API versioning strategy in Framework 7.
Yeah, I think when go ahead.
The JVM continues to move forward, and you get to look ahead. I'm sure there's been features of the JVM over the years where you've been like, finally, we can put this into the framework and it's going to help us so much. But on the other side, where's the balance between looking ahead at what the JVM is going to offer and being ready for that and looking out into the world, into the marketplace and seeing what the developers are going to need outside of the JVM. How do you strike that balance? And can you give us a glimpse into the future? What are some of the things that you're looking forward to or you're thinking about in the future?
And I think null safety is a really good example of that, right?
We were already referring to that, right? It's definitely one of the things. So basically, Project Valhalla, everyone waits for it. No one knows when it actually lands, sort of. Right. But it's not that far out.
Right.
And both the notion of value types and condensed memory layouts for certain arrangements where object identity isn't the primary concern. There's that, but there's the language impact. Can we actually get a stronger Java-C enforced nullability arrangement out of that? It's very much on the roadmap there, and sort of expected that something will land. But yeah, I mean, I guess I can just pick up what I mentioned a moment ago there. The JSpecify is the best you can do right now, and that's when we come back to the real world, right? When we come back to the current market situation.
Yeah.
No one holds you back as an application developer to adopt JSpecify now. You get the Spring Framework 7 boot 4 portfolio, right? You get many other third-party libraries out there using JUnit, everything. JSpecify is a pretty common ground right now. And if you choose to use JSpecify in your own Java-based application project, you can immediately reap the benefits out of it. No need to wait for anything landing in the JVM right now, right? So it's exactly that balance that we need to find to provide solutions, approaches that can work right now, that can be brought into production right now. At the same time, keeping in mind where the JVM and the language go, sort of pre-aligning, forward aligning with the direction that we expect there. That's exactly where we are, right? So, and JSpecify can also easily be used on a Java 17 baseline, no problem, right? So you literally don't need to upgrade Java in order to be able to use that. Or same with Kotlin, right? If you mean to consume a strict nullability arrangement where nullability is part of the type system, nullable types, non-nullable types are basically inferred into the type system, then Kotlin already gives you a glance at what this can feel like, right? This kind of tighter, stricter arrangement that just naturally works against JSpecify enabled library APIs and framework APIs. So that's great, right? But I'll also be entirely selfish. I particularly like JSpecify for all the value that it gives to us. Within the entire framework code base, same that you could be doing in application code base, you can validate all your code paths all the way through, right? The entire data flow, the entire code flow. You basically you need to use it consistently. You a deep breath, kind of bring JSpecify into the entire code base, but then for maintenance and evolution from there onward, it's a great asset. I would not want to miss it. Nullability definitions in the entire framework code base are a godsend for us.
Awesome. All right. So we've been talking about Spring Framework 7, Spring Boot 4. I know you mentioned it earlier. So Spring Boot has a new version every 6 months, Spring Framework every year. So the end of November, we have another version of Spring Framework. And you said already starting to think about that, right? So I know you can't give us plans on that, but how is that starting to kind of take shape?
Yeah, this early not only early thinking, there's already a bit of a focus, right, of priority setting that we do. I mean, the Framework 7.0 really started a new generation, right? We very much tend to think in framework generations. So baselines are set, general arrangements are established in the initial release of a generation. And then we can build on it and refine from there. But I also admit, I'll be the first one to admit that with every generational launch, there's always things we did not get to. Things we would have loved to do in 7.0, but just didn't get to. Right. It was very much the same back in Framework 6.0. for that matter. So in case anyone noticed that Framework 7.1 and Framework 7.2 were among the richest feature releases we ever did, even if the version number was rather minor. 6.1, 6.2 were enormously rich feature releases.
Yep.
That's exactly because of all the backlog we had from 6.8 that we did wanna catch up with. 7.1 is not going to be as dramatic a feature release as, say, 6.1 was for that reason, because we actually we did get to most things this time around. But there's one area that we wanted to revisit but couldn't quite, and that's Spring AOT itself. Spring AOT, the AOT transformation arrangement for Spring-based setups.
Yep.
Which back then, when it was conceived in Framework 6.0, it was targeting GraalVM native images and basically the tightest possible constraints you could work toward.
Yeah.
And now we already brought it into other environments. You can use it on the JVM. You can use it with Project Light, and that's all great, but it's still applying quite strong constraints. And it would sort of be an interesting trade-off to have a variant of Spring AOT that does less. It doesn't transform all the beans necessarily and lock them down structurally. It would just do the class path scans at AOT time, create the CGlib classes at AOT time, prepare a couple of things that we can easily do on the side, right? Basically for a quicker warming up. And basically leave it there, right? Do exactly that. That would be a fine-tuned companion to the AOT cache features that Project Light brought into the JVM. Not applying any stronger constraints than the JVM itself does. So that's an area we are desperately waiting to revisit for that reason. It's not a necessity for Project Light, but a nice bonus, basically, right?
Yeah.
Whereas for GraalVM native images, obviously, it was a mandatory precondition to do.
Yeah, that would. And when AOT came out, like that was kind of the big feature of it, right? Like it was a precondition for building these native images. But we find out later on, like it's actually really useful for other things. Spring Data came out with a feature called AOT repositories that took advantage of that, and that was really cool.
There's definitely further things we can do. That's another thing we want to do. We want to make Spring AOT a little more modular, first-class modular, right? So that you can easily plug that other portfolio projects, but also third-party extensions could plug into it more easily and participate in this kind of transformation, optional transformation step that you can add to your AOT phase. It's also trying to meet what Project Light does, because the AOT cache in the JVM is also very similar in a way, right? So it's already pretty nicely aligning. It pre-computes JDK dynamic proxies and pre-verifies the bytecode of the classes loaded. We're trying to be also conceptually very close to the assumptions that the JVM AOT cache model makes. And we've been also collaborating with the Java platform group toward that, right? So we've been,
that's awesome.
From the early days on, we were part of the Project Leiden kind of feedback loop, and in many ways the fine-tuning of what we have now in JDK 24 and what we will get soon in the JVM is very much also a consequence of some of the feedback that we gave already. But yeah, there's also more things we can do, and we are totally up for considering our options there, even if they are sort of an additional optional step that you can apply. It still makes a lot of sense to have a bit of a more modular and less constrained version of Spring AOT. So there's that. That's a key aspect. And another area we also love following up on is what I like to call virtual thread friendly architectures.
Ooh.
So we are very much on a mission there. Virtual thread support dates back to Framework 6.1, right after the JDK 21 launch. But with JDK 24, 25 now, we get a much more practical implementation of virtual threads with less concerns to be had about thread pinning and anything. Yep. So the time is now, basically, to provide all the pieces of the puzzle for virtual thread-friendly architectures with imperative call stacks, but just pieces in place that allow you to to fine-tune a virtual thread-oriented architecture. Like
Nice.
if you don't use a thread pool, you don't have a natural constraint on concurrency, right? You need to manually bring those in. We have add concurrency limit now as part of the core resilience features.
Yep.
For that reason, or not, at least partly for that reason. I say even retry features have always been part of reactors. So if you build a reactive pipeline, you were able to influence the scheduling and the concurrency level, but also you had retry features baked in right into the reactive pipeline. Us having retry features now in Spring Framework 7 is partially also inspired by being able to provide the same building blocks for virtual thread-oriented architectures at the same level, right? So that's already a bit of a background mission, and we're trying to continue from here. There's a couple of problems that really don't have a first-class solution yet in the virtual thread model. There's a structured concurrency coming in the JVM as an effort that very much works in the direction that we foresee, that we envision. And we're also closely involved in the feedback loop there.
Nice.
With the Java group. But we also want to provide some pieces like for hot stream access in a virtual thread arrangement, imperative call. There's certain pieces that we can deliver, that we can provide on our own, that are sort of a little forward aligned with where structured concurrency is going. But again, the time to actually solution is now, basically.
Right.
Years down the line. So we're once again in this situation where we're trying to identify what we can do right now that's going to naturally fit into a more like structured concurrency JVM enforced arrangement going forward. So that's also inspiration.
The whole idea of like Project Loom and everything that JDK has done around that, it's just been really amazing to me. Again, we kind of switched to this like every 6 months we get a new version of the JDK, and they've done just an amazing job of identifying like features, because for the longest time it was go use other language because concurrency model over there is a lot better, right? And so they saw a problem and they fixed it, and it wasn't perfect on the first iteration, but man, it is really like shaped into a really nice story. And the first thing I tell people when we talk about Spring is like Spring Boot 3.2 and Spring Framework 6, when it added virtual thread support, I was like, this is probably one of my favorite features, because if you're doing the types of applications that a lot of us are building, like you're going to get some real benefit out of this. And to like see this like really take shape, I'm excited about it. As DaShaun always says, it's a great time to be a Java and a Spring developer. And I couldn't agree more. So,
and we get the benefits by flipping a flag, right? Like, you didn't have to do a whole lot. Virtual threads enabled, and you got all this,
at least benefits. The initial benefits, which is great, right? But then once you actually go down that path, you can craft even more nuanced use of virtual threads for purposes. So that's what I really appreciate about it. It's very much an architectural enabler. It enables you to see things in a different way, right? Where you traditionally thought you had to do asynchronous interactions or reactive pipelines, you could possibly express yourself in a just equally performant way, ideally, in a virtual thread-based arrangement. But I mean, it's for that reason, for both reasons, basically, for the flex part of it, right, and for the architectural enabler part of it, it's just a great foundational feature in the JVM.
Yep.
It's all of these pieces, JVM, framework, all of these things, there has to be an order. Sometimes they don't come in exactly the right order, but there has to be an order to things. Some of these things have to be done before we can get to some of the other projects, some of the other JEPs that are lining up. I'm looking forward to all the things that are coming from the Java ecosystem. In particular, Project Babylon has a lot of my focus, because we're going to be doing a lot more things with the JVM. Who knows where those workloads are going to land, right? They're on the mainframes, they're on the edge today. But we're going to be opening it up to more than just the CPU in the near future. And it's a very exciting time.
It is.
For as long as I've been doing this, I can look forward the same amount of time, the same 2 decades, and there's lots of stuff to look forward to.
Whenever people, they don't say it as much these days, but when people say Java is dead, I go read the mailing list, because it is certainly not. Like, I see the activity on the mailing list.
Yep.
And yeah, and it's really exciting about everything that's getting worked on right now. Yeah. So
for the 25th year in a row, Java's dead.
Whew, yeah. All right, Juergen, I think we'll end it there. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day and chatting with us. This was a lot of fun. We'll have to do it again soon.
Always talk about things, right? More. I really appreciate to also be able to just more freely talk about why we do things. So great topics and great questions there.
Where will you be next? Because I want to say, if people have not watched some of your Spring IO talks are like one of the my most replayed talks. Like the one on the bean registrar and the injection points, I've watched at least a few times now. So, will you be back at Spring IO this year? What's next for you?
Yeah. Spring IO is a little. It's we are always rather involved in preparing for Spring IO, but this time around, it's Spring IO is a little earlier than usual in the year.
Yeah.
So a little closer to our. We just launched 7.0, right? So we're in this aftermath where we still refine things. We obviously have plans to go there. I will be there, and we did submit concrete talks.
Nice.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to actually turning into a more Spring IO mode of operation somewhat soon. But first things first, right? So it's great timing in the end, because at Spring IO we'll be able to talk literally about a mission accomplished in Spring Framework 7.0x, including the OX part, where it's basically as complete as it gets in that branch. That's a perfect time to bring it to the public, right? And to talk about it at Spring IO. So I'm looking forward to that.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks again, Juergen. Appreciate your time. And thanks for everyone for joining us. And we will see you in the next one.
Absolutely.
Have a good one.